My name is Donald Romanik, and I am president of the Episcopal Church Foundation. And thank you for joining me to talk a little bit about the revelation of God through unlikely leaders, and especially as that is discussed in the first 5 chapters of the book of Exodus. And I'd like to just share a few thoughts with you that might provoke further thoughts and conversations on your part. I think we all know the story of Exodus chapters 1 to 5. After Joseph and his family moved to Egypt and are there for generations, the Hebrews continue to grow in number, and the Egyptian authorities are concerned about their overwhelming numbers and feel threatened by that and wonder whether they might even rise up against the Egyptians or fight on behalf of the enemies. There is that edict that all the male Hebrew babies are thrown in the Nile River. Right at the same time that 2 Levites have a baby boy, they put him in the basket, it floats down the Nile. The Pharaoh's daughter finds the baby, names him Moses, and raises him as a prince in the palace. Moses comes of age. He tends to have a sense of connection with the Hebrew slaves. He kills one of the Egyptian overseers. He flees to Midian. He develops a relationship with the priest of Midian, marries one of the daughters, and then is called to the mountaintop of Horeb and discovers God in a burning bush. I think we all have seen the Cecil B. DeMille epic, The 10 Commandments, that was made in the 50s and continues to be shown on a regular basis, starring Charlton Heston as Moses. And Charlton Heston is tall, he's handsome, he's bold, he's strong, he has a booming voice, he's self-confident, clearly trying to convey the Moses figure as bigger than life. But I'm wondering whether or not the real Moses, the Moses that is described in the first 5 chapters of Exodus, would be able to show up on the set of 10 Commandments and be cast as Moses by Cecil B. DeMille. Perhaps the Moses of the real Exodus is a very different person. I think this goes back to the whole issue of leadership. And in secular society, people often question, are leaders born or made? We'll often look at a younger person or a younger leader and say, oh, that person is a born leader. Often younger people show their leadership skills in the classroom or on the athletic field. There's also that old adage that God doesn't call the qualified, God qualifies the call. So here we have Moses. Here we have Moses who kind of appears in this story. And at the end of chapter 5, we get at that point where he's sent back to Egypt and he's running into a lot of roadblocks because despite what God told him, Pharaoh's not going to let his people go. Well, let's back up a little bit. And when Moses encounters God on Mount Horeb, Moses doesn't embrace this new role with a lot of joy and promise at that point. In fact, he questions God, why me? Even to the point of saying, I can't even speak very well. I am meek and humble, send somebody else. And God even kind of expresses a frustration with Moses and finally says, okay, you can bring your brother Aaron with you and Aaron will speak on your behalf. And they start this new partnership of Aaron and Moses going back to Pharaoh and asking him or telling him to let God's people go. Interestingly, when you are called by God to be a leader or called by God to perform a particular task or role, that's the very beginning and not the end. Clearly, in this case, the call on Mount Horeb was a very preliminary part of Moses becoming the leader he was destined to be. He goes back and fumbles and isn't the Charlton Heston figure of the Ten Commandments, but is more of a kind of common, ordinary person who's trying to figure out what this incredible role is all about. Eventually, after a lot of wonders and miracles and plagues, Pharaoh does let the Hebrews go, and we know the story of crossing the Red Sea and the covenant of the Ten Commandments and the golden calf and all those wonderful stories that are so seminal to the Hebrew scriptures and part of what we recall, especially around Easter time. But what does the story of Moses, especially in these first 5 chapters, what does it tell us as followers of Jesus, as pilgrims along the way today? I think what it says basically that all through human history, the Hebrew scripture, and even up to this day, God calls upon us as human beings to bring about God's plan for salvation. God doesn't do it on God's own. God uses us in this process. And most of the people who are called to leadership positions by God are ordinary human beings. Let's look to the New Testament. We look at Zechariah, we look at Mary, we look at Joseph. These people, although they've become incredible figures in our faith and our iconography of biblical heroes, they were ordinary people at the time who stepped up to the plate to assume a significant role in God's plan for human history. The other thing that we have to realize is that leaders need followers. And just because God may have chosen or called Moses for this significant task of freeing the people of Israel from bondage and leading them to the promised land, he had to go back and convince the religious authorities that he indeed was sent by God, that he had credentials, and he had to earn their trust and respect. And that doesn't always come easy. You can only lead if you have people following you. And you may be called and commissioned, but it's a lot of hard work on part of you to make this a reality. Moses goes back and does tend to convince the religious authorities that this is indeed a call from God. But then we hear the story in the first 5 chapters where Pharaoh says, okay, you have to start making bricks without straw. And the people get really concerned on whether or not this Moses guy and his so-called relationship with the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, is a really legitimate process. A lot of setbacks in this story. And just when you think Moses gets the upper hand, and if you remember the movie, just when Pharaoh says yes, he changes his mind, even to the point of following the Hebrews into the desert when they are crossing the Red Sea and starting their incredible journey in the wilderness. But as faithful people on a journey toward discipleship, we have to continue to be open to a call. And obviously, it's not going to be as significant as some of these seminal biblical calls, but we are all called to be God's agents for justice, love, reconciliation in this broken and fragile home called Earth. And especially now, more than ever, we have a responsibility for being the eyes, ears, hands, and feet of Jesus in helping to heal this incredible sense of fragility in our world right now. What the story of Exodus teaches us as leaders, as followers of Jesus, as pilgrims, as would-be disciples, that we are all called to be a significant presence, a significant agent for God in our own time and place. And we may not have the words, we may not have the skills right now, but if we respond to God's call, and like Moses, partner with an Aaron and other folks who are also on this journey, we can make a difference in this world of ours. So I commend the first 5 chapters of Exodus, as well as the rest of Exodus. And as you read it, contemplate the incredible power of God in our lives and the fact that it's not a straight line, but a path that has ups and downs. But ultimately, the people of Israel did get to the promised land after some fits and starts, after some successes and failures. And ultimately, God prevailed and the people were free. Thank you.